G'day friends, I'm Jake and this is Medium Yield. Spend a minute around hospitals, medicine or doctors and you'll notice a recurring symbol of a snake or two coiling up a rod. Sometimes there's one snake, sometimes two, and sometimes there's a pair of wings at the top of the staff. But where do these symbols come from? And why does it sometimes have wings and sometimes not? In this episode I'm going to dive into some history. It would be a stretch to say that I'm even an amateur historian, so I apologise for any mistakes I make along the way. The main source for this episode is a deep dive into Wikipedia, and full references are in the show notes. Let's go back to ancient Greece. Asclepius is the Greek god of healing and medicine. He's the son of Apollo and the grandson of Zeus. He had several children. Of medical interest, there's Hygeia, a goddess of health and the source of the word hygiene, and Panacea, the goddess of universal remedy. Asclepius might be modelled on the Egyptian Imhotep. Imhotep was by all accounts a real person who lived in the 20th, 7th century BCE. In the centuries and millennia after his death, his legend grew and he became deified, and by the 4th century BCE, he was known as a healer. In Greek mythology, Apollo reared his son Asclepius for a time and taught him about medicine, and he also received a formal education from the centaur Chiron. At some stage, Asclepius became associated with a staff with a snake entwined around it. The exact origin of this association is murky. Asclepius had a long association with snakes, and in one story a snake whispered secret knowledge in his ear. Several symbolic explanations for the snake have been proposed. Snakes shed their skin, symbolising rejuvenation, and snakes have been used as medicinal products. The staff may stem from wandering doctors who might have used walking sticks. Thus, from antiquity, the Rod of Asclepius has been a symbol of medicine, and particularly of physicians. Just by the by, the exact snake is said to be Zeminus longissimus, a non-venomous snake native to Greece and other parts of Europe, and with a common name, the Asclepian snake. And apologies for my pronunciation. So that explains the symbol of a staff with a single snake coiling up it. But what about the symbol with two snakes with a pair of wings at the top? Well, this is the Caduceus. This symbol has a much shorter history as a symbol of medicine. It's associated with Hermes, who was the uncle of Asclepius. Hermes was the herald of the gods and was able to move between the human and the divine worlds. And he was a protector of human heralds, travellers, thieves and merchants. Apollo, Hermes' half-brother and Asclepius' dad, gave Hermes the Caduceus as a gesture of friendship. So we can see that the serpent is a bit of a family symbol. Much like Asclepius' rod, there are several stories proposing the origin of the Caduceus. But apart from the family connection, Hermes and his Caduceus had very little to do with medicine, so why do we see this symbol associated with medicine now? There are some scant associations between the Caduceus and medicine throughout the medieval period, often to do with eye medicine, particularly after Homer's description of the Caduceus having the ability to charm the eyes of men. But as late as 1854, it was clear, at least in the UK, there were two different symbols with two different associations. Asclepius' rod representing medicine, and the Caduceus representing trade. At some stage in the late 19th century, the Caduceus started appearing in medical contexts in the United States military. It appeared on the uniforms of hospital stewards in 1856 and on the seal of the Marine Hospital Service. In 1902, the Caduceus was adopted by the Medical Department of the US Army. This decision has been attributed to a single officer, although there is some uncertainty as to whether the particular officer was Captain Frederick Reynolds or Colonel Hoff. In any case, it was an immediately controversial decision. Much ink has been spilled as to the reason behind this decision, but I think possible explanations fall into three main categories. The first explanation as to why the Caduceus might have been adopted rather than the Rod of Asclepius is just that it looked cool. To quote the Encyclopedia of United States Army insignia and uniforms, the rod represents power, the serpent stands for wisdom, and the two wings imply diligence and activity, qualities which are undoubtedly possessed by our medical officers. The second explanation is that it was deliberately chosen for its association with commerce, with a suggestion that the symbol had been used in the past to distinguish civilian or commercial ships from naval vessels, and therefore the Caduceus was an appropriate symbol for military medical staff to identify themselves as non-combatants. The third explanation is just that it was a mistake. Somebody mistook the Caduceus for the Rod of Asclepius. Given that this mistaken identity has continued in all sorts of contexts for more than 100 years since, I don't think that this explanation is particularly difficult to believe. Since 1902, there has been much upturning of noses and snobbery regarding the choice of the Caduceus as a symbol of medicine. Some would say that it's an entirely inappropriate symbol, given that Hermes is the patron saint of thieves, liars, and gamblers. As Hermes was the patron of commerce and traders, some feel that the Caduceus has far too mercantile a feel for what should be a more humanistic profession. To finish up, let's talk about Australia. The medical services of the Australian Defence Force are not at all consistent in their use of these symbols. Navy medical sailors have used the Caduceus on their insignia since 1974, although the RAN Health Service crest features the Rod of Asclepius. The crest for the Royal Australian Army Medical Corps has featured the Rod of Asclepius since 1917, but officers of the Royal Australian Air Force wear a Caduceus collar badge. Of the 16 Australian medical colleges, the crest for one college, the Australian College of Dermatologists, features the Caduceus. 9 colleges use the Rod of Asclepius, and the remaining 6 don't use either symbol. Of the Australian ambulance services, all bar one use the Maltese cross as their main symbol, which is the symbol of the Knights Hospitaller, with one notable exception being Tasmania, which features the Caduceus. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Medium Yield, recorded on the lands of the Yuin and Jerrinja people. Thanks also to everyone who listened to the first episode and provided me with some really lovely feedback. It's been a really great experience having people join me as I nerd out. That's it for the second episode. See ya!